want to contribute to why I see Vinay, you talked about lack of templated approach and design thinking. Sneha, thank you for contributing. Underestimating required resources, right? Going back to the tragedy of commons. Yeah. Also, another point, usually GitHub is seen as a place for people to collaborate and create their open source repositories. But most of the users on GitHub are developers. They're not product managers, community managers, and project managers. Those things happen on different platforms, right? Even for us, we go to Catalyst, there's an amazing community, but our source code is not hosted on Catalyst. I'm not saying that it should, right? But perhaps, going back to interoperability, having some kind of integration that's easy, right, to the platforms that the community managers or project managers use, ClickUp, Jira, whatever, Confluence, back to GitHub, right? Even between Catalyst and GitHub, where it makes sense. That would probably bring some people's people into the open source community and help drive out. Yeah, go ahead, Sebastian.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, I was trying to complement your point from the CIP perspective. So CIP are Cardano improvement proposals that people make in order to improve the Cardano ecosystem. And the website hosts the draft of the proposal, but the comments are made on GitHub. So if you go to the comments, they are basically only from developers, and basically the general user or the broader audience is never aware of what is the status of that CIP. So CIP tend to die because they lose traction with the community. Only the developers comment, and once the developers get bored with that idea or basically they forget, the CIP dies and never gets adopted. And I think that's a big challenge coming for Cardano, that basically the way these proposals are supposed to get adopted is by the community improvement, commenting, and basically giving them visibility. But if that visibility is at the mercy of whoever is going to comment on the GitHub repository, then they tend to die out and basically are forgotten, and nothing gets improved. So CIPs are having a lot of.
Awesome. Anybody want to comment on why open source projects are facing some of the challenges that we're discussing? Okay. Seems like we exhausted this question. Let's go to our next.
Sorry.
Yeah, go ahead, Patrick.
About interoperability.
Yep.
One of the common traits of open source project is I get to your repository, I read the README. The README should be clear, should explain how to build the project, how to run the project. And at this point, when I have an MVP that I can build and run, then I can do experiments, change it, integrate it in my one. So if you want your project to interoperate with others, there should be a clear README. It should be open in the sense that I can understand with a good README. The README is good enough to tell me how to build, which is the technologies that are missing, all the stack, the technological stack that is needed, and how to run it. And at this point, if I'm interested, I should learn by myself how to extend it or getting in touch. So four elements are needed: good doc, good intro on what is the project, good build, how to build, good how to run, and then contact with the people. So again, good introduction about the project, good how to build, good how to run, and good how to contact. These are the four key elements that I believe are needed. think about it. You want to use a new project that somebody told you is cool. What are you going to search? This is a question that's open to all of you.
Awesome. Sorry, Patrick, could you repeat that question? I was just writing, taking up.
A question to all of you. Let's say that Nin suggests me a super cool project. I get to the project, typically is a VCS, a repository. Let's say it's GitHub for simplicity, can be GitLab, whatever. Now, what do you need to understand the project and participate, contribute on it? The answer, the collective answer, is what we need to make the project open source. The process, the standard that we need, I believe. When I did contribute to open source a few years ago, I was lucky that there was good documentation, and after being interested, I found the project lead of this project telling me, yes, you need to build this way and to contribute. There was a very good how to contribute guide. Yes.
Yeah, Johnny brought that up in a, what are the challenges? There's no contributing.md, right? And I even would take a step further, right? There's not enough, even entry level tasks to start contributing. Like even if you're expert developer, right? Anytime that you come to a new open source repository, a new project, even if let's say someone gets hired to join a team full time and start contributing something, there's environment set up. There's also the dependencies, and also just going through the source code and reading it. And oftentimes what we do on our team is just to create kind of entry-level tasks that are level appropriate, right? Especially, I talked to Johnny the other day, and he mentioned the Cardano open source, all of the different things that they have at IOHK. And there's some of the foundation building blocks of the Cardano protocol that are extremely hardcore. That requires specialized knowledge, right? But even so, even if you have the specialized knowledge, when you get to this completely new project to you, yeah, you need some documentation, how to get started, right? What do you think?
Well, no, I think where you're going with that is it goes beyond. There's some idiomatic things there as well. So even within the documentation, like if we look at the example of the Linux kernel, right? There, even if something. Linus in his TED Talk video, right? He kind of gave an example of simple algorithms even that when implemented. Yeah, both solutions are potentially correct, but one is just better. And there are trade-offs potentially between different solutions. One that is maybe a little bit harder to appreciate initially, that one solution might be more elegant, and one solution might be more easier to maintain, right? More straightforward. And those trade-offs aren't always easy to understand and appreciate upfront. But and then within, when we're talking about stuff that requires really that maybe can be fairly esoteric, right? Or use advanced language features. Sometimes those are harder to fully grasp.
So it sounds like documentation has a limit in itself, right? I don't know who put in not enough mentors here. Is one of the solutions like getting people together and walking them through, you know, the challenges or the features or the code base?
It's certainly one path to a solution. It's not always one that everybody can entertain or
Scalable.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But for certain size projects, yeah, having little micro summits or having office hours or Zoom sessions, things, you know, you want to try to rely as much as possible on asynchronous channels, you know, and the discussion boards and communication channels. But sometimes a real-time face-to-face walkthrough office hours type session can go a really long way. It just doesn't, you know, it can save time in the long run, but you can't, it's not particularly scalable, right?
Right.
You know, and so even if you just for example, how do we solve for these challenges? If you can't do that every single time, if you're explaining something to somebody about a particular idiomatic way that you're doing something, if you could record that,
yeah,
and
exactly,
then make that, if you could record that and share that as homework or required pre-reading, right? Here's a checklist of prerequisite knowledge or here's some context for why a particular design decision was made. That could go a really long way.
I would probably even do, you know, there's some transcription services, right, of meetings, and just prints out the text for people who are super fast readers. I love the idea. I think there's a way, like one-on-one meetings are always most effective, right? You have, like, even on whether it's, you know, onboarding or customer support, sales, whatever it is, you get the most attention. You can ask questions. It's in a private setting and so on. Workshops also extremely effective when someone's trying to learn about something new to them, right? Recording those, I don't think a lot of the open source projects, they're going to change so much that you need to re-record maybe once a year, right? You'll do a workshop, onboarding workshop, but then do people have time? You did mention in the first, when we talked about, you know, the what are the biggest challenges, right? You said, you know, people are volunteers. It's not their full-time thing. In addition to, this is like the work that people do in addition to their full-time work, right? How would we go about solving those? And that's for everyone, not just you, John.
Here, in this case, I think there is a very useful tool that is getting popularity in Ethereum that is called proof of attendance. And the idea is every time you attend a meeting, every time you contribute, every time you make something for a project, you get a token. It could be either a fungible token or a non-fungible token. And basically, the accumulation of all of those tokens at the end of the day give you some sort of higher standing of the community or some sort of proof that you are actually an active member, right? You're part of this community and you're contributing. And that not only gives you more a sense of personal reward, right? Because you can see all of these tokens or all of these assets that you have accumulated by actually working, but they give your opinion or your your actions more weight in that community, right? Because you have this backing that, yes, I did all of this. I'm not a new guy in this ecosystem.
Gotcha.
My solution.
Yeah, I love that. You know, I love empowering people who are expert contributors. Yeah, Patrick, I want to give you.
I think the proof of merit can be hijacked like any automated system. I observed the system. I want just to disclose the system I saw in the Eclipse Foundation. It's basically you contribute to a project and you do it in form of external contributor. You push your pull request, somebody's going to merge. And then when you did enough contributions, let's say in my case for the Eclipse ID, after I did like, I don't know, 40, 45 contributions, the project lead or one of the persons proposed me to become one of the committers. So to have this distinction between contributor and committer. And this is not necessarily, so it's not necessarily about how many commits you did. Maybe I did, if I did like 40 changes on a README, it's nothing. But if I did, I don't know, 2 or 3 changes on how all the classes are compiled, on the cache that is keeping all the abstract syntax tree of the code that I'm writing, then these are huge things. And go in the merit of what is huge or not, only people that already have experience are able to. That's why I believe the proof of merit is going to be a system that takes a lot of time to be invented and a little time to be hijacked. That's why I'm suggesting this idea of contributors versus committers.
Patrick, can you expand more on the contributors versus committers so that we're all on the same page?
Sure thing. Say I want to contribute to the Eclipse ID. I read the contributing MD, I learn how to contribute, I start pushing changes. Every time, as I'm an external contributor, I push my changes and somebody that is an expert, is a committer, so he's an expert, he watches my contribution, he says, yes, this is good quality. So it's basically a review. A review from somebody that is coming from the outside. He has not merit yet to directly commit if he wants on the master. After this number of contributions, or let's say it can be, you know, even a single contribution, but a huge thing that really brings a big piece of functionality in your software. And this depends, this changes between project and project. After I did enough contributions, somebody that is already a committer, so elevated level, it's in the team. Somebody from this starts a voting session. He proposes, hey, let's get this guy, this is a contributor, let's vote for him to become a committer. And then, that's the funny part. If everybody agrees, you get committer rights, otherwise not. I remember that when I was proposed as a committer, one guy told me, you did only like 40 or 50 contributions. When it was my turn, it was like 100 or so. But if I say no, that would be the death kiss. So I'm not saying no. He wrote me this direct letter, but I will be looking for your endeavors. And it ended up that was really good to know that somebody clearly stated, I didn't vote no, but be aware that like 2 years ago, it was harder to get this higher level of permission.
Awesome.
And yeah, the merge to main rights, somebody has to have merge to main rights, and it's the people that started the project at the beginning, who knows the solution architect at the beginning, and then the inner team, and then later, the more you contribute, the more you are, it's like proof of stake, the more you contribute, the more you are invested. At a certain point, you are part of the people that know enough, they are invested enough that we can give you permission to merge to master if everybody agrees.
Okay, I get it. Pathways to contributorship and some kind of mentorship and even leadership in this project, right? Very clear. But do you think this is enough to keep developers engaged?
Well, there is a number of tokens of appreciation one can receive. For instance, I remember that, I don't know, my 10th contribution, somebody shipped me a t-shirt, of which I'm very proud of it. And, you know, after becoming a committer, I was able to basically leave my day job, relocate to another state and start working as a consultant, which is one of the objectives of the Cardano community. So when you are a committer, say on, let's say that we're talking about Plutus, and then you start making changes to Plutus as a contributor, so an external contributor. And your quality of commits getting higher and higher enough that somebody proposes, hey, let's take Nin and let's make it a committer. Everybody says yes. I agree. At this point, you are recognized by experts that you are good enough to do this. What will happen next? What will happen is that commercial companies that are interested in working with this technology, they know straightforward who is the person to contact. And probably what happens is that maybe you open your small firm. There are other cases like Cliff Source, they start building a framework for they're selling to many customers in Germany. Other people, they are selling more vertical solutions to top customers. They have NDA, stuff like that. But the point is you generate an ecosystem of experts, which is what is keeping up the open source ecosystem.
Yeah, for sure. Thank you, Patrick.
Yeah,
go ahead. Did you want to finish?
Yeah, one last note is I think we lack, what we really lack is a sufficient number of start here, of quick starts. And let me make an example. You probably know Spring Starter or NPM. There are a number of frameworks that with a few instructions, they generate applications that are MVPs, minimal viable products, and then you can use them. Do we have something like this in Cardano? Now, if you start having applications that can generate small feature complete applications that everybody can change, then you will see that the number of open source projects will expand. So we need frameworks. An open source project generator is a type of framework that is very particular, but I think we need framework. Frameworks are things that everybody will benefit of it. And that is the next level. That is about having standards across projects. But that's the next level.
Awesome. Anybody else want to contribute to solutions? How do we solve for some of the challenges? Awesome. Johnny, I see you type in the chat, opinionated frameworks and pattern libraries. Yeah, Patrick, my comment to the discussion right now, for sure, right? The open source community, the world is it's a small world, right? The open source community even smaller, right? And if you're volunteering and spending some time on something, there should be pathways to, to get more rights, to be a leader, and to build your reputation. And reputation, a lot of times, can be used towards financial freedom, right? You open up your own dev shop. I know Frank, who's here, he's been doing Web3 and AI machine learning for a while, and he's doing at some point consulting business too, just from the community, just from people that have seen his work, right? Yeah.
Yeah, Nin, I think there's some brilliant points being made here. You know, proof of reputation is at the core of this. Arguably, proof of identity, proof of merit. These are all various schools of thought that need to be, you know, at the forefront of our attention as we start to debate what an open standard or collection of open standards would look like. I think gamifying the verification. So on the administrative side, or rather, we talked about standards for accepting contributions. And I think that stems back to just proper documentation. But beyond that, I think one of the goals of any open source project should be to document to a level to where, you know, it's not just dependent on the author of the framework for the project to proceed. Like, if the documentation is deep and proper enough, like technically you could let it live with anyone visiting your repo and picking up the pieces and progressing. Again, this is high level speak of like what an eventual kind of optimal open standard would look like, but we need to consider that, you know, through public goods bounties, perhaps these things could be incentivized, or people could earn, partially through merit or reputation, the ability to not only contribute code, but also to review, like peer review and code review, to earn, you know, a different kind of reputation, so that they could maybe level up in, you know, their ability to be administrative maintainers of open source communities, or be welcomed to those posts. And I predict that many open source projects will be coupled with some sort of DAO component, with a quadratic voting or some sort of voting community aspect. So, you know, I think this will become a little bit easier when proof of reputation matures. I know we talked about on-chain practical resume, a composable NFT idea, but yeah, there's a lot of interdisciplinary dependencies here. But these are great points.
Yeah, one of the other thing too is also just maturity of the ecosystem. And one of the realities of it is with the kind of scarcity of, you know, with Plutus being relatively young ecosystem, a lot of the folks that have Plutus skill sets they're working on projects that they're trying to deploy and build to get to production. So there's not as many people kind of just contributing, building pathways and ladders for others to climb, and kind of demonstrating that. So which by the way, I mean, in the near future here, I'm going to be looking to hire folks that, you know, actually enjoy that work of connecting with, not necessarily building their own projects per se, but really more, you know, mentoring and teaching others. So champions, evangelists, solutions engineers, people who aren't necessarily building for the purpose of taking to production, but building for the purpose of creating examples, tutorials, and that type of learning content, right?
Yeah, Johnny, I was just thinking that before you mentioned that. You know, we talked about project managers, community managers, people, right? Sales engineers, solutions architect. Those are, you know, engineers and people's people. Oftentimes that they understand code and they can also connect it with business needs. or community needs. I think that's an excellent idea to get them get that that community or that population involved in open source projects. But how do we do that effectively? You said you're looking to hire, right? That means just hire and compensate and fund the initiatives. They can do the documentation, they can be mentors. They may not write the code themselves, right? They may have, yeah, go ahead.
I mean, building a workshop, building labs, building lab guides, building tutorials takes time, right? And you know, a lot of the folks that have the skills and the wherewithal to do so are gainfully employed on building dApps and building projects and consulting and, you know, building projects that they have, you know, upside exposure to, right? So taking somebody that actually enjoys, you know, and that comes back to, you know, I always think of like Kelsey Hightower, right? If anybody's ever watched Kelsey, you know, do a live demo on stage, he's like a god at it. It's so inspiring. You watch him do it on stage, and it's just like, wow, you know, like I want to download and start playing and, you know, just following along, right? And we need Cardano, Plutus, Mamba. We need our Kelsey Hightower to inspire and motivate others.
Yeah, 100% agree. I think if we have people in like that spot where they're very effective advocates for the ecosystem, right? On Cardano, open source ecosystem on Cardano, they can get more people excited to contribute to become mentors, and also to provide all this documentation that's needed. Do you guys believe that documentation is endless work, or is it finite? Right? It may seem endless from when you start a new project, and holy cow, we don't have anything, and I have to write everything. Or you've already have a huge like there's huge projects already on IOHK in Cardano, right? And where do I start with this documentation? And it could seem like endless. Or is there a finite number of documentation and open standards, right? Where the project can start to scale on its own. And I agree with you, Patrick. You know, documentation is important. I think we all established that. But is it endless work, or is there a point where
at the beginning? So the university, my professor, sorry for interrupting. At the university, my professor told me either you write documentation while you are writing code, or you never write it. So I'm now working on legacy tools. And like in a high-paying job, somebody told me, I asked for documentation, and somebody replied me, it's in the code. And you don't believe it, but I have tested the third number, like test 001 up to test some hundreds. So there is not even the description. Now the point is, when you start, it looks like it's endless. It is endless. But when you start, you need to have a very clear direction. The first README is the direction of the project. What is this project doing? And then little by little, you focus writing documentation of the components that are more important. Say that we write an application, and at the beginning, we were focused on how to write the contract. Then we start writing the contract, we try to design the state machine that is behind the contract. Then you decide that it's not anymore a couple of applications that are interacting on your Unix machine, but it has to be something that has to run on your browser. Then you focus on like a minimum viable product that is running on the browser. And then you need to explain how it's working for the people that are coming from the outside and are trying to understand if you want to spread the thing. Now, when you learn all these stuff, you typically are very busy. You don't have time to mentor other people. But that's wrong, because that means that you are gaining personally, but you are losing in terms of the community. and you go nowhere. Like one of the problems of Cardano is that we are using Haskell. It's not a problem actually. If we keep up the work of teaching people, there are a lot of people that are really motivated, that are keeping banging their head on how should I do this? Honestly, I've been funded with some friends and we are building something, and still I don't know. There is something that I posted on the Cardano Stock Exchange. I still don't know how to do a minimal viable product. I'm searching my Gmail now so I can send you an example. I have to do a minimal viable product of the most simple contract that is just having living in my browser and sending a transaction using, say, Nami wallet. Now I'm going to send you Stack Exchange. I'm going to send you the link to my question that is there a Cardano Kickstart application? That's my link. That's an example. So if you can reply to the most basic questions, if there is a widespread understanding of the basics, everything is going to build up. It's like the Legos. You have the Legos, you know how to build the basic blocks, people will be able to build the next. Now, what I see it's lacking now, it's like a simple way to start up, say, your Plutus development ecosystem, or whatever. You know, if you have a Mac, it's not going to work. If you have Windows, it's not going to work. Maybe if you have Linux, it starts well. But then above this, you have to add other layers. You need to understand Haskell. And I think we need a lot of modules such that the people, they have skills, they understand which module they can skip just to get to their objective. We need the map. Each piece of documentation that you write for your project should and must be reused by other projects to simplify their own. And altogether, the community will increase their value. Sorry for being so opinionated and lang.
Have you checked out Plutonomicon?
No, I don't know what you're talking about. Thanks.
Awesome. You guys have resources, right? I mean, the Plutus ecosystem is new.
And now the question is, how many people do? Okay, let's assume this is the best resource, the only one that I need. How many people do know this resource?
Yeah, we definitely acknowledge that. I mean, there is, I mean, just having a central resource on landing page. I mean, typically we want to branch off everything off of Essential Cardano, right? Essential Cardano is kind of the cow path for where a lot of these things come together, right? If you're looking for a project, you can go to Cardano Cube or Built on Cardano or Building on Cardano or one of those other resources. But those are resources for general community members and end users. We need similar resources that are developer focused, right? Because it's disparate, it's spread out all over the place right now. And just kind of having one place where you can go for regardless of skill level, right? Regardless of experience level, you can go to one place and you can find everything from beginner to intermediate to advanced resources, libraries, tools, stacks, frameworks, all of that stuff in one place. We need that for sure.
Yeah,
what I believe. The foundation should provide the infrastructure to host a forum, and we already have it, and to host a wiki, and we don't have it, as far as I know. That wiki should be the central point. Every project should try to add the information in there. And then each project should have their own documentation in two forms. One that stays with the source code, and the other that is a guide that you deliver your real documentation, your product documentation maybe in a
Okay.
website. But basically, the real point is, like I was writing here, you need to incentivize people that for each project, they go to the contributing MD. They try the contributing MD and they say, yes, I understand what this is about. Yes, I'm able to build it. Yes, I'm able to run it. Yes, I will be able to contribute and make change on this. 4 points: understand, build, run, perform changes. Based on these 4 points, you know if a project is really open source friendly. And you want to incentivize these people, because with these, so these are people that have to work in an asynchronous way, provide input to a project. If a project lead gets this information and there's an act on this information, then he might take further measures, like whatever. I'm not able to set up the environment on Mac, and you can tell me how there is this other resource that explains how to do the setup for Mac, or don't use a virtual machine. I know this information because I did so many trials with different systems, and at the end I succeeded. But a clean path is what everybody wants. We need to simplify the work for the others, like we would do for our kids. I won't tell, well, ideally I won't tell my kids to do the same errors as I did, unless an error I know it's safe enough and it's a learning experience good enough to be in his life. So the point is, the next people that are coming after us, they have to learn, and this is really a job. If you are the best developer, maybe you are focused on delivering, but if you just deliver and you don't consider the others, then you are alone.
Yeah. Yep. Patrick and Johnny, thank you guys. I want to open it up just for other people in the session. Do you guys want to anything to say? Anything to contribute? Any opinions? Burning questions? No. Okay. Okay. I hope the discussions is interesting. I was gonna add, Patrick, totally agree with you. I was thinking, you know, obviously, being designated as a mentor or as a leader within a project, right? And having new people come in, oftentimes they don't know that there's a newcomer or new contributor, right? Because it's on GitHub, you just visit the page and thanks, Sebastian. Thanks for joining. There's no place where a newcomer, new contributor can say, hey, I'm interested to start contributing to this project, even, right? Maybe they have a contact info in the README, maybe they don't, right? But we should facilitate some connection between the project leaders and people who want to start contributing, and also
Office hours.
Office hours, exactly. And also, you know, classifying difficulty. Some open source projects are super difficult to start and contribute. Like average Joe would not be able to do it, and some are more noob friendly, right? Newbie friendly. And hopefully, as the ecosystem matures, right, we'll have more and more experts, as well as more and more newbies, right? Do you guys feel like mentorship is the right vehicle to increase the proficiency level?
Mentorship is is never a bad thing, but where mentorship can go wrong is pairing somebody who's not ready to be mentored or require, or there's too large of if there's too large of a gap and you have a bad mentor, right? Or so one potential approach that's better than mentorship is as the idea of qualified apprentices, right? An apprenticeship program where you've cleared certain hurdles and tick certain check boxes to be admitted into an apprenticeship or a fellowship type program.
Awesome. I might just start putting stuff in the next slide because we're starting to run out of space in the last one.
And that's actually a good one. The simple assignments, right? They're almost like simple coding challenges, right?
Right.
Yeah, they're not even truly bounties. They're really more of drills and exercises.
Yep. Yeah. What else?
I was going to say, my question with that is, who is creating the exercises, the drills for the entry level?
I know this sounds crazy, but sometimes the today I learned approach, right, is the new people who are encountering and solving problems, we should encourage them after they've solved the problem to go back and say, basically explain their approach, because that's actually a really good example of, and most people take that for granted, right? There is I think sometimes that hardest step is the first few steps, that journey for the beginner, because there's I don't know, maybe a bit of an imposter syndrome, and they solve an easy problem, and maybe it's not, whatever problem, that challenge that they ran into, there's a pretty good chance that somebody else who's starting out is going to, embracing that beginner's mindset and saying, I know this was probably not, you'll look back on it in a year and be like, oh my gosh, it's such a simple, trivial thing. But right then and there, in that moment, for you, it was not trivial. And for the next person who's starting off on that journey along with you, it won't be trivial either. So I guess just encouraging people to not take for granted, or to not be embarrassed that certain things are harder in the beginning, and to acknowledge that others will kind of are possibly on that same step in their learning journey as well.
What about like more established, bigger projects, right? They don't need, obviously they need every help, but it's gonna be hard for entry-level people to contribute, right? What about those? Any solutions? Shadowing opportunities, apprenticeships, right? How about apprenticeship and shadowing opportunities that lead to full-time jobs? Because these are already more established developers, right?
It doesn't really pass the message. I mean, shadowing opportunities is not something that I can correlate to something that it doesn't explain that. What is it? Can you please argument?
Yes.
Yeah, go ahead, John.
Sometimes with to your point, shadowing, you have to pair up, the right levels. I don't, and so there's just got to be I guess a syllabus, a curriculum, a pathway, right? There has to be a progression ladder, right? And once you progress to a certain point, then you can shadow on something, and then reverse shadow. I mean, shadowing is just can be a pretty effective way, but more often than not, if you're shadowing somebody who's too advanced, you're just lost.
What I'm saying is that basically at work, often I do something, and then after 3 months, I need to do the same thing. And I typically look at the bug tracking system. At work is Jira, say the Eclipse Foundation uses Bugzilla. Many people use GitLab. I don't think GitHub Bugs is a good tool, but I mean, it's an opinion. Now, what happens is I find a good first bug. I start working on it because there are like 2 ADA incentives. And then I read, but if you write really good documentation on the process, you get 10 ADA. Then what will happen is that the people, they say, well, since I'm working on this, trying to achieve the best. And then you start having really a number of good explanations. And this, yeah, okay, you've done it, or very good, you've done it well and it's explained. Then this is staying in your bug tracking system. That is keeping all the information about the construction of your software. Mm-hmm. And the documentation, it then can emerge. It can be an emergent feature of what you did on there. So you can actually use, this is something that I just invented, but you can use your bug tracking system to create documentation.
Sure.
Something I believe.
Well, or even just commit comments, right? I mean, that's the kind of the hidden or embedded documentation, right? And coaching and teaching new committers or contributors how to write really good commit comments is severely underrated and underappreciated. Right? And what I mean by that is when you actually write your commit comments, to not just to take your time and to be verbose in capturing your approach to solving the problem, your approach to understanding the problem, and providing more context in the sense of, you know, here's the approach selected and here are the alternative approaches considered, right? So that you can take people along on the thought process with you. I totally agree. It's a severely underappreciated practice.
I can add something. Not only the comment, but when you comment the code as well. So when you're reading the code, by explaining what you are doing, gonna help somebody to follow your steps. So it is very important also to comment the code as well.
Yep, I totally agree. But there are some though that I don't know, elitist, if you will, that you know, they
Purist.
just believe, the purist, right, that the code should be so clean and should be self-evident, but that is an unfair assumption.
Everyone's entitled to their opinion, right?
It's a dream. It's a dream.
Hey, from my experience, you know, commenting always a bonus. I love the idea of different, you know, just like CA, we have great review, excellent review, whatever, right? Could be great commit, pull request, and different rewarding level. I want to go back to James's question, right? Who's creating these low-hanging fruits, right? Bounties. I assume we will either need a solutions architect or community manager or project lead, or even an engineering manager that has a deliverable on this open source project to be creating these. Or it could be somebody who wants to lead a project to shadow or reverse shadow somebody who's doing this type of work. You know, yeah. Anything else, guys? I think we arrived at a pretty good point. Yeah, Johnny, Patrick, Chris, James, Frank. Yeah, some total amount of funds. Yeah, I think I want to hear more from people who didn't chat. What do you guys think of the discussion? Should we do this again next week, next 2 weeks? You know, how much can we milk this, right? Yeah, anyways. Last step here is please leave your contact information if you want to collaborate and discuss further, right? I will share a form to both this that I'll share to everyone that was in the breakout room or just fills out the form. If you guys want to build a better open source Cardano community in and out of Cardano, please fill it out. And then, you know, whether Discord or Telegram, so that together, you know, open source is a public good. And I'm so glad that we're getting more funding and commitment and incentivizing people, creating pathways for a more vibrant ecosystem for all of us, right? To make Cardano more accessible to developers and builders. Anyone else want to add anything?
I want to add something. I want to say like this is a very good topic because that will help us to really find what's the challenge and how to solve this problem, because for sure every project with open sources, the challenge is there and we're gonna have challenging. So from the beginning finding what the solution we can, it will help us to fight with those challenges.
Awesome. Thank you, Beatrice. Thank you, everyone, for contributing and joining.
Take care, everyone.
Yeah, have a great day. I'll see you.